Hey guys, Eli here. I'm going to break down how I'm analyzing the data that's produced by ArmCare's Strength and Range of Motion tool. It's a dynamometer that measures force being applied to an object, and that force translates into being able to gauge your internal rotation strength, external rotation strength, scaption strength, and it also gauges or assesses your range of motion. So what you're looking at on the screen here, it's a PowerPoint presentation and I have some screenshots. So these screenshots are from the ArmCare iPhone app on my phone, and I wanted to put them side by side in this format so it's easier to talk to instead of hopping back and forth between iPhone screens. So again, there's going to be two screenshots per PowerPoint slide. This first screenshot is showing the trends section of the report card, and it's allowing me to see how I performed over a period of time. I still don't have a whole lot of data points. I only have 5 data points in here. So not a whole lot of data points, but I'm starting to get enough to see what I believe is an accurate picture of my arm strength. So that's the first screenshot. The second screenshot's a benchmark, the benchmark section of the report card, in the report card section of the ArmCare app. And it's setting benchmarks against people similar to you. So when I set up my profile, I let them know that, hey, measure me against professionals in my age range. So I'm 39 years old, put in my age, 39 years old, and I said measure me against professionals in that age range. So that's what this professional benchmark is. So a couple things, one thing to note before I jump back over to the trend section. This 45, this green box with the line showing you where you stack up compared to your benchmark, is the most recent assessment. So this is good if you want to take a pre-throwing assessment before you throw to determine how or if you want to adjust your throwing program for today to see where your arm strength is before you throw, to tailor your daily throwing routine or program to your arm strength. Really good data point to look at. I'm wanting to see where I stack up more holistically. So overall, like not just today, overall, all these assessments that I've taken, where do I stack up? So that's why I have this red box. Jumping back to the trends screenshot. That's why I have this red box around the average. I want to look at my average over these 5 assessments that I've taken and see where I stack up to my benchmark. So my average internal rotation strength is 48.2 pounds. 51 is the benchmark for professionals. So I'm doing pretty decent. I'm stacking up pretty decent. There's still definitely some room for improvement. Some of these assessments are going to be skewed. So I've had a difficult time with the internal rotation, taking the internal rotation assessment. I started off taking it on my kitchen floor, putting my arm up against our kitchen island. And we have LVP flooring in our kitchen. And I have enough force, internal rotation force, that when I started the assessment, I literally moved my body, like my whole body scooted back. So that happened today. That was this before 50.5 pounds. That was the reading while I was scooting across the floor. So my post-throwing assessment today, I changed spots. I went out on the front porch, used a column on our front porch, put some weights, some dumbbells down, and tried to hook my feet into those. And it was really awkward. Like there was this bump out at the bottom of the post. It was really awkward. So I do not think either of these were very accurate. The most accurate one I've had is this best, the 54.5. You can see it here. It's the top data point. My wife helped me with this. She held my ankles. Like I asked her, I didn't make her. I asked her and she agreed to hold my ankles so I wouldn't scoot when I did it. So that's probably the most accurate. So I'm not too concerned with these being low, knowing that the assessment, I had issues taking the assessment. But if you look at me if you look at my results over the past 5 assessments, my average is 48.2 professional, benchmark's 51. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. Jumping over to external rotation, same thing, same screenshots. My average is 46.6. My benchmark for professionals is 48. I'm feeling pretty good about that. So I feel that my internal rotation strength, external rotation strength is strong. Now, if you look at my ER-IR ratio, this is telling you if you were balanced. So you don't want your internal rotation muscles a lot stronger than your external rotation muscles, because that would mean you can create a whole lot of force, but your brakes, your external rotation muscles that slow your arm down after release, they aren't strong enough to handle that force, and that's when you can get into tearing rotator cuffs and rotator cuff muscles, and you don't want that to happen. So you want a proper balance between internal rotation strength, external rotation strength. You can see, so this before and after, this is my pre-throwing assessment from today, my post-throwing assessment from today. There's a pretty big gap there. There's a pretty big variance. Again, I think, like I mentioned earlier, that IR test was pretty skewed, so that probably had something to do with it. But if you look at my average, 0.97, and then you go over to my benchmark, 0.94, on average, I'm trending very close to that benchmark. So I'm comfortable at this point with my ER-IR ratio. And lastly, in terms of strength, we have scaption. So again, same thing, same screenshots. My average 34.6, my benchmark 33. I'm trending above scaption strength benchmark, and both of my scores today were either right at or a little bit above professional benchmark. So I feel I have strong scaption. My scaption strength is high. And finally, jumping into rotation, you can look at your internal, external rotation. This is showing IR on the graph. You can click this, if you were in the app, you could click this ER and it would plot out your ER assessments, and then total arc of motion, it will plot those out too. But I can look down here at my averages. My average is 71 for internal rotation, 110 for external rotation, 182 for total arc of motion. Total arc. So I was a little bit higher today on my IR, a little bit higher on my ER. Today, in terms of comfort, my arm felt the best it has since I started throwing again. So I had a little bit more internal rotation, a little bit more external rotation, and this latest is after I threw, and I had a very low intensity throwing session today. It was a recovery session. So I did my warm up, and then I threw 30 balls at about 50-60%. That was it. So it really didn't fatigue my arm. It just stretched my arm out. So that's probably why we had the increase in IR-ER range of motion. So I'm not too concerned with that. So that is it. So let me recap everything that I just covered. You can use the ArmCare results, the ArmCare strength and range of motion results, a couple different ways. You can use it to assess your real-time, current day arm strength to determine how or if you want to modify your throwing program. Let me give you an example. I can look at my benchmarks and I can take my assessment before I throw. Let's say that right before I throw, I'm performing under par. So my ER strength is a little bit low, my IR strength is a little bit low, my scaption strength is a little bit low. That's telling me my arm's a little fatigued, that it's not fully recovered. Let's say that day I had a max long toss session scheduled. I may dial it back a little bit and only go out to 80 to 90% distance and throw at 80 to 90% effort. On the flip side, if I take my assessment and my arm feels great, I am at my benchmarks or maybe even performing a little bit above my benchmarks in terms of ER strength, IR strength, scaption strength, I didn't have a max. I didn't intend on stretching my arm as far out as I could in terms of distance when long tossing and really pumping up my intensity. If I didn't have that plan for the day, I may decide to do that because my arm's ready for it. It's telling me my arm's fully recovered, and I could push it a little bit. So you can use it for real-time day of assessments, and you can also use it to see your arm strength over a period of time. I use data a lot in my business, in my house buying business. The more data you have over a longer period of time, in my experience, creates a more accurate analysis. So I want to see, definitely want to use it to gauge day of strength, but I also want to see how I'm trending over a period of time to get in what my opinion is, a more accurate picture of actual arm strength and arm health. So that's kind of what I broke out here in these slides. Again, I boxed or highlighted or squared out, whatever you want to call it, the average, and then I compared that average to my benchmarks to see how I'm trending. Again, I don't have a lot of data points yet. I need more data points. 5 is not a lot. I'll probably be happy when I get 15 to 20 data points, 15 to 20 assessments in here. Then I can look at that average, then I can look at my benchmark, and at that point I'll feel pretty confident that it's more accurate. But we're getting there. It's a handful of assessments, that's good. So you can also use it, like I just said, to look at your average compared to benchmarks to see what I believe is a more accurate picture, a more accurate analysis of arm strength and arm health. So that's all I have for you. Really awesome tool. I mean, to be able to understand your arm strength, arm health, whenever you want, pretty much wherever you want, considering you have a good place to take the assessments, which I'm still working on, a good ground to lay on where you won't scoot on it. And if you're pressing up against something, that something isn't going to move when you're pressing it because you're pressing it so hard. But pending you have that, it's really cool to be able to have this data at your fingertips. A quick story, I remember back in my days when I was rehabbing from labrum and rotator cuff surgery, I partially tore my labrum and rotator cuff my junior year at Kennesaw State. And before I was released to throw, I had to go meet with our PT, our physical therapist, and he would perform these tests really in an archaic fashion. Not knocking our PT, but our PT wasn't in the best shape. He wasn't the strongest dude in the world. And he's telling me, he's putting me in these positions similar to what the positions you get in to take the ArmCare assessments. He's like, push on my hand. And I would push on his hand, and he'd be like, yeah, you feel like you're strong enough and you're ready to go. And it was this guy, he was a physical therapist, taking the force that I applied to his arm, which has no gauge, and just basically going based on feel, his opinion, if I was ready or not to engage in a throwing program. It was crazy. That's what we did. We didn't have this technology and this data at our fingertips. So really, really cool data, really, really cool application. The guys who put this together, I've been listening to their podcast, super smart guys. Really impressed me, and I really think they're filling a hole in baseball data or arm health data that's really needed in the industry. So that is it. Sorry for the ramble. As always, appreciate your time. Look forward to talking with you guys again soon.